Excess deaths, they were figures that we focused on very heavily during the pandemic. It would appear we're still suffering from excess deaths of about 1,000 a week for the course of the last year. Now, bear in mind, we do have an ageing population, we do have a rapidly growing population, but these figures are adjusted to deal with that. Well, I'm joined by Angus Dalgleish, Professor of Oncology at St George's University of London. And I'm wondering about this, Angus, because I'm looking at excess deaths during the pandemic, but equally before that, I mean, clearly the rate of death in Britain will grow with an ageing population.
Yes, it will. But these figures are meant to be adjusted for that.
Meant to be, yeah.
Meant to be adjusted for that, and age adjusted as well. And I mean, I've seen the very raw figures, and they are quite worrying, because there's excess deaths of the younger people going on, not just in the older population, right, but in the people under 40, and the real peaks between 40 and 64, 65. Now, this is something that is highly unusual and highly alarming. It was initially dismissed as due to people not getting statins. Remember, Chris Whitty said this, which I thought was really quite alarming, because you don't get offered statins till you're over 55, 60, so it can't possibly be involved with that group. Now, the one major thing we said was lockdown. The effect of lockdown and everything it did, this would go on, bang on to excess deaths due to cancer and various other things.
Because of misdiagnosis.
Misdiagnosis, mistreatments, everything. But there's something far worse than this. Now, when you actually look at these figures that we have, they're the same in Europe, in Australia, in other places too. And one of the things that I flagged up, and nobody's taken any real notice of, and it's even more pertinent now, is that others have pointed out this excess death started and correlates with the vaccine programme. So it doesn't mean to say it's associated, but why hasn't it been looked at? Why hasn't it been really, really subtly looked at? And it hasn't, because myself and other colleagues have raised this ad nauseum, and we get absolutely nothing but to say it's all expected.
I mean, the claim is, Angus, from the establishment claim is that having the vaccine saved a huge number of lives, and that whilst there are some who suffer from side effects, they are a tiny percentage.
That is what they claim. Well, I personally don't believe it at all, because one of the things that you get taught when you're at medical school, if you know two people with a condition, then it's very common. Well, I find it very difficult to find people who don't know someone who's had an adverse effect from the vaccine campaign, the vaccine programme. And the bottom line, it wouldn't matter so much if the vaccines were doing something against something which was killing us, but it's not. The COVID against which the vaccines were against, it's long since left the Earth. It left the Earth possibly getting on 2 years ago. And
but hang on a second. We're told that COVID's coming back. And
yeah, but it's a different one, and it will not be affected by the vaccine. Whatever they tell you, the companies tell you that they've got a bivalent vaccines which will protect against the vaccine. Well, I can assure you they don't. I mean, they got passed in 8 mice, and I mean, you can't tell anything from 8 mice. Only when you can do those programmes properly in a community can you make those sort of claims. But I disagree that any of those claims can be justified.
Does your scepticism about this vaccine make you a pariah in academic and medical circles?
Yes, of course it does. It does, because there is a groupthink that thinks and accepted it's very good, it's safe and effective. When I was trained as a clinical scientist to look at the facts and to constantly change my opinion depending on the facts. And this is what's going on. The facts are changing. And at some stage, well, I point out in the big American flu crisis of 1977, when they were dying, the soldiers were dying in their 30s, they rushed out a vaccine programme where 42 million people were vaccinated. And then there were reports of Guillain-Barré, which is this assembling paralysis, which is not uncommon with a lot of vaccines. And instead of denying it, they sent people out into the field. And they came back and said, yes, it definitely goes. And do you know what they did? They turned around and they said, well, no one's dying of the flu anymore. Let's get rid of the vaccine. We should have done that, I believe, a couple of years ago.
Well, Angus, it's fascinating. As I say, I could get a lot of people on from academia and the medical world who take a very different view.
Totally.
And I've had them on this programme trying to convince me to get the booster. But let's move on to your absolutely specialist field of oncology. Now, the Times newspaper going very big today.
Yes.
on several issues to do with cancer. The first one we touched on a moment ago, lack of diagnosis for cancer during the pandemic. How serious is that?
I think it was very, very serious, and that's why I said at the time of lockdown that anybody's lives saved from lockdown would be more than tripled in people who died because of lockdown. And if they'd had the services, I mean, the NHS became a COVID service, so everything was shut down. And we know that within cancer, getting early diagnosis is absolutely crucial for cure. I mean, it's really amazing how well we've improved over the last 20 years. We can cure a lot of cancers that couldn't be cured before, but only if we get them early. And what we are witnessing is people who've actually had the symptoms, they've tried to get tests and they've been cancelled 2 or 3 times. And then by the time it's sorted and they go for their treatment, they've been treated for a stage 3, stage 4 cancer when they should have been stage 2, potentially completely curable. And that is the problem. Now, the other thing that's come on that we're dealing with is the number of people who are now being susceptible to cancer because of their lifestyle. And one of the biggest is actually obesity. I mean, we've recognised this obesity for a long, long time, but it is a major cause. It was picked up initially with renal cancer, then endometrial cancer. But actually, when you look back, it's all cancers. And there was a report in the Times that it was costing us 100 billion, which is nearly the cost of the NHS a year.
Yeah.
We're going to have to start tackling this sort of thing to bring down the cancer rate.
I mean, they were suggesting, and it's modelling, and it could be completely wrong, but they were suggesting by 2040 there could be 1 diagnosis per minute in the United Kingdom. So the regularity, the percentage of cancers as a percentage of the population is growing in our country.
Without a doubt. When I started doing oncology, it was 1 in 10 people were going to get cancer and needing treatment. And then within 20 years, it was 1 in 3. And now 1 in 2 patients will get cancer in their lifetime.
Wow.
So the demand just from the current population, let alone the excess population, is just enormous. And I don't feel that we've actually planned to deal with that. That's the other thing.
Well, there are 2 points here. One is how we deal with it. We're clearly going to be a huge problem. But the other is, of course, the best medicine of all is the medicine that can actually educate people and stop them getting it in the first place. We fought huge battles with drinking, excess drinking, smoking, but you're suggesting actually diet is now playing as big a factor as anything else.
I know there are some experts, more expert than me in these fields, who actually say that the diet and obesity is now a bigger cause of cancer than smoking and anything else put together.
Wow.
So it's beholden on us not to ignore that and to act our policies, because it could save us so much in the long term, in the long run. And it's not just cancer you get for your obese, you get all the other things go with it, diabetes, hypertension, everything, etc.
No. Well, I think the education system's got a very big role to play. Angus, never boring. Thank you for coming on and joining us on GB News.